Hello and welcome to today's Clear Process Solution Web Tips. My name is Zander Kapandi. I'm a process developer and I'm here to show you how we can use JS or JavaScript for complex rules in Evolve. Here we are in Winchell Evolve. I have made a solution today for the example for today's web tips. Going to the form section, we see we have two views. We have one group containing a few checkboxes and a table with two columns and a button. Second view is very similar. It has an additional button and also has a current user control for us to get the task name from. Evolve is very powerful and offers us a simple way to create these forms for solutions so that a user can come in and check off boxes or input data and send that off through the workflow. Let's say that we would want to have something required or change properties. Winchell Evolve has their own rule wizard. So if I go onto any field or checkbox in the properties pane, we have rules. Inside the rules, we can add a new rule and we get a little wizard here. We can rename the rule, make sure that it runs on form load right when you go into the form. The type of rule we want it to do, validation, form actions, and custom. For today, we're just going to review custom. And here we can set the condition on when the rule is to be run. So the condition can be based on if a field is blank or if it's equal to something, if it contains or doesn't begin with. So you have a lot of options. You can add more conditions based on and or, and also add groups. And then after that, you can do the actual rule for what you want it to do for the action. And that can be changing the field properties, showing them, hiding them, setting it to enabled or disabled. You can set the value of it and much more. For today's solution, I want to show that the user has to come in, check in one of the checkboxes. They are also required to have a value in the column A. It has to either be a 1, a 2, or a 3, and there can be as many rows as possible, and then they can save and route. That is the first task. The second task for them is to come into the second view. Everything is read-only except for column B now, and depending on what they selected for the checkbox, 1, 2, or 3, and what is in column A, 1, 2, or 3, if those correlate, it will set the cell in column B to be required. Let's see how the rule would look like if we created it in the wizard. I have the rules set on column A. We have 3 rules. And we can see here that we have one rule set requirement for 1. And what it does is it checks to see if checkbox 1 is equal to X. The way that works is that for the checkboxes, I have the custom value set to true, and I have the checked values marked to X, the unchecked value marked to blank. Going back to the rule, we see that the condition is if checkbox 1 is equal to X and column A contains 1, and the current task is equal to complete table, then it will make the column B cell required. For the current task is equal to complete table, that is checking a couple things. One is that the current user control is set to put the task name to a field that I made current task. And in the workflow, I made a task called complete table after start. So in the form, we have the 2 buttons complete and JavaScript submit. They both do the same thing, except that the JavaScript submit does JavaScript code right before it submits the form. What I want to show you today is that these rules are very common to use to try to do this task of setting a required cell particular in a table. And we can show that to you today how that would work. Here I'm going to open up the form. And let's say for today I need 2 and 3 required. And I will have one row of 1, another row of 2, another row of 3. Now save and route. The task comes back to me as complete table. And we see that we don't have anything required, even though those rules should have been fired at the beginning. Now we can do complete, and unfortunately, it's not doing as we asked it to do. It's not running these on the required cell. What we could do is set these to form load, or you can also put them on the view to run the rules on the field on column A. And we already had that activated as well, and that didn't work. We can try a different tactic, and that'd be using a custom rule with JavaScript. So on our JS submit button, we have a custom rule where we have the JavaScript and we have another rule for submitting the form. Let's go take a look at that JavaScript function. So if you go to solution, we have the JavaScript code section to the right. In here, I made a function called require shipping table. And it might seem like a lot, but a lot of this was actually written for us. One thing I want to show off is that these sections here, these if conditions, these are actually made from Evolve. So if you take a quick look at this, I can cancel this, go back to the form, go back to column A where our 3 rules are. And for each rule, if you click on the 3 dots, you actually get view rule in JavaScript code. It will give you exactly what I have in the function. You can just copy and paste this and it'll do exactly as what you have in the condition and action. So I copied all 3 of those and I put them in a for loop. The reason why I put it in a for loop is because I have a variable called row count, and that is getting the count of every row in the table for column A. And it's using that number to loop through 0 to that number. And for each one of those values, I added a bracket plus I plus bracket because I had to add it in as a string, but also as a variable. And that will make sure that the actual cell within the table is being checked. And then when that condition is met, I am setting the same row in the table for column B to be true for the requirement. Let's see how that works now. So let's go initiate one off. We can do the same thing, 2 and 3. Row 1, 2, 3. And do save and route. Task comes back to me to complete the table. And now if we do JS submit, it'll run the JavaScript code and try to submit, but since we haven't done the requirement, we'll get that alert, letting the user know, hey, you have checkbox 2 and 3 checked off with the variables 2 and 3 in the table, correlating that B has a requirement for those 2 cells. The small piece of JavaScript code that was written allows what the developer has envisioned for the user to go into the form and a workflow and to complete their task. So now if we do anything within here, we can actually submit now. Evolve is very powerful by itself. You can do a lot of things that are very simple to use with rule wizards and bringing in elements and using the form data to set and create values. Though there are times where Evolve can't do everything you envision. So you can use JavaScript to bring those 2 together and forward your process in the workflow.